it's really hard to meet new friends once you graduate college or leave high school and come to a new city. You've been with the same groups of friends throughout your years, and then you go to work and maybe you don't have that work wife, or you find it difficult to find that person who gets you. So I wanted to create a space where people could make new friends or gym partners or people that push them beyond their normal friend group.
From the cubicle to the lab, the studio to the war room, climbing the corporate ladder, or joining a scrappy startup, experience a day in the life of the jobs you want. This is the Experience a Diddle podcast.
A diddle, spelled ADITL, stands for A Day in the Life, and that's exactly what we do. We interview professionals, entrepreneurs, and recent grads about what a day is actually like, hour by hour on the job. This podcast will inspire you to gain experience beyond the classroom and launch a career of your own.
We're your hosts, Krista Bowe
and Matt Poe.
Welcome to part 1 in the 2-part Nurture Your Network series. In this episode, we're going to experience a day in the life, hour by hour, of Emily Merrell, the founder and chief networking officer at 6 Degrees Society, so you can decide if this is a career you can see yourself doing. You hear us saying over and over and over again about how important networking is, and we hear you. It's nerve-wracking to put yourself out there, but if anyone can change your mind about that, it's Emily and her 6 Degrees Society events. You'll learn what makes 6 Degrees Society so special in a second, but a lot goes into planning 200 plus events per year. Let's learn how Emily works her magic to pull it all off. Let's get right into the day.
It's 6 a.m. on an October Tuesday in New York City, and Emily is waking up. Emily says there's 2 sides to her, New York Emily and San Fran Emily. We're meeting New York Emily today, who stays at her mother's apartment in Flatiron when she's in town. You're in for a treat because apparently Emily thinks New York Emily is much more fun. Let's meet her and learn more about what 6 Degrees Society is.
I'm Emily Merrell, and I'm the founder and chief networking officer at 6 Degrees Society. I created 6 Degrees Society before job titles were even a thing. I didn't think of it as a founder thing. I didn't think of it as a coming up with the perfect title. And it's weird when you work for yourself and you have to give yourself a title. Like, the idea of it calling yourself a CEO is so peculiar. But 6 Degrees Society is a female-focused networking organization, and we handpick who you meet while networking. So networking is one of the most awkward things out there, and we try to make it really easy for you by taking the guesswork out of it.
Awesome. I love that so much. And then I just want you to go into a little bit, because you've heard of BNI and just like other networking chapters and groups. What separates 6 Degrees Society from those groups in terms of the events that you put on and just in terms of the whole mantra of the company, I guess?
For sure. So BNI, and I support people who go to BNI, and it's so great for so many people, but it's my version of hell. It's my version of hell. If you look at networking and it's synonymous to hell, that would be BNI for me, unfortunately. I'm probably going to get sued for saying that. But I really don't like networking to be transactional. I hate that feeling when someone sees where you work and they want something out of you immediately. And for me, I worked in the fashion industry, and people would see a discount from me. They'd be like, "Ooh, can I get a discount at where you work?" It's like, you don't even know me yet.
Right.
You're already asking me for things. So although BNI is really great for, fast transactions and building those relationships, I wanted to create a space where people could come from all industries. You don't have to be just in finance or fashion. You could be a side hustler, you could be a full-time hustler, whatever you wanted to be, and find commonalities that aren't just work related. Because sometimes the best relationships develop out of friendships, and then they turn into something more, or it just stays as a friendship. And I think for women in particular, it's really hard to meet new friends once you graduate college or leave high school and come to a new city. You've been with the same groups of friends throughout your years, and then you go to work and maybe you don't have that work wife, or you find it difficult to find that person who gets you. So I wanted to create a space where people could make new friends or gym partners or people that push them beyond their normal friend group. And you've been to events before.
Yes, it's amazing. I mean, like, we've had so many interviews on this podcast from people that I met at 6 Degree Society. I've like made friends through 6 Degree Society. It's really, really something special. I've been to other networking groups, and it's nothing as authentic and unique as the events that you put on. And not only are you bringing people together, but you're also adding some sort of value that people can, learn from. So it's not just, it's a friendly thing, but it's also an educational thing, which I love so much.
Well, I think that actually, you had asked an earlier question, what else do you do besides the networking? I think learning is really hard to do on your own as an adult. Google is your best friend. I use it all the time. I'm like, how do I make butter? Whatever it is. But what if you had someone to teach you how to make butter instead, collectively? I want to learn something new every week, but I don't want to pay $90 every week to do it. How can I create something where people can teach their expertise because they want to share their knowledge with each other, but it can be affordable? So that's why I created the membership too, where it's $40 a month and you can come to 5 events a month and get this value where you're bringing 2 guests. And so you feel like you're taking your friends out, which was something I really want to do more, is like treat my friends and make them feel special and like a baller, even though they're not. But there's always wine and food and like some sort of programming that I always say that it's personal, professional, or lifestyle development.
6 Degree Society has chapters all across the country in New York, LA, San Francisco, Chicago, Boston, New Orleans, and Washington, D.C. She treats her chapters like retail fashion brands treat their stores. She has her flagship markets, she has her tier A markets, which are consistent, but she doesn't need multiple events per month like her flagships do. And then she has her seasonal markets. She learned this through her experience in the fashion industry as an event marketing assistant, which we'll get into more depth in part 2.
Back to the day. On this particular day, Emily is spending it getting ready for a 6 Degree Society event sponsored by Luna Bar. But first things first, New York Emily treats herself to a Soul Cycle class with a friend and runs into a bunch of friends while she's out. Perks of being a people collector is you always have a friend to catch up with anywhere you go.
You're always in a networking
I'm always in a networking mood. So this was great. This is actually a really fun friend. So I met my friend Elle, who's the co-founder of Argent, which is a blazer company that's super, super cool. They basically want to eliminate women wearing purses. And so you can have like pockets in the jacket, and they have their inside pockets for your iPhone and your keys and everything. But yeah, so I saw her, but funny enough, she is an alumni, a Tory Burch alumni. And we didn't know each other at Tory, but we got connected by someone else down the line. So we were catching up, and then where we were catching up was across the street from Tory Burch. So I texted one of my girlfriends, Caroline, who works there, and she met me at this new coffee place that had not been there when I was a youth working there. And I get in line and I turn around and I run into my friend Eric Brown, who went to Denison with me.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm like, oh, this is Elle. She works at Tory. Used to work at Tory. Caroline, meet Elle. Elle, meet Caroline. Oh, your Uber's here. Bye. Here's Caroline. Caroline, meet my friend Eric. He went to Denison. She went to Miami of Ohio. Okay, literally that's that. And then walked home.
So you showered and then you got dressed. I'm interested on like a typical day. Like, what are you wearing during your as an entrepreneur? Are you because when I'm working on the podcast on Mondays is my off day, I'm sitting there in PJs.
So I always try to treat my days like I'm like real days. They are real days, but I try to think, what would this be like if I was working in the corporate world? So like I usually do 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 mentality. Yeah, typical day I wear usually high-waisted jeans that are about 11 inches rise, and I'm a sneaker girl, so I'll wear like a black pair of leather sneakers and usually a leather jacket or my Argent blazer. So it's like, I call it homeless chic. So I still look put together, maybe a bold lip. Usually for the night, I'll put the bold lip on and it just dresses me up and makes me ready. And then I try to go to a co-working space. And so this is where when I'm in New York, like I do not want to be in my mother's apartment. Like I love you, Mom, but like it is very challenging to try to get work done and concentrate when dogs are barking, breakfast is being made. It's just a different mentality.
It's now 11 a.m. and Emily is walking to her spacious co-working space. Yes, the co-working space is spacious, but spacious is the name of the company, not to be confused with the adjective.
They provide co-working spaces at restaurants that only have a dinner crowd all over New York City. So Emily has the convenience of a change of scenery and a place to have meetings. She gets there at 11:30 and is coordinating with her virtual assistant, Tara, on tasks that need to get done before the event. I want to know how you found a virtual assistant, why, and then how it benefits you.
Oh my God, she's the best. I would die without her. A cold spam email from this company called Byron. And I got on the phone with the guy. We have a mutual connection. He went to college with one of my friends. Always helps. Like if you find that one connection with someone, you're more pre-approved to move forward. And I thought I was fine. And I realized at the end of last year, my word of the year is delegate for this year. Like if it hurts my shoulders and I start feeling stressed about it, delegate it. Like here I am spending hours putting bios together. And I had a friend that said to me, she's like, you should only be doing CEO tasks. Is this a CEO task? I was like, probably not. No, it's not. It's not. So she is actually the third assistant through this program. But then Tara has been great. And she does the things that I don't want to do and shouldn't be doing. And so even for the quotes that we put on our Instagram, I have her research quotes. And so I have like a database of quotes to pull from, and then I create the graphics for them.
Oh,
Gotcha.
nice.
I used to have her create the graphics, but then I changed every graphic, and I was like, okay, I'm still a control freak. But for me, my life, I try to batch out so much of my life. So like Instagram, I try to batch out a month in advance so it goes live without me even thinking about it every day.
It's now 1:30 in the afternoon, and the README email goes out to all members and attendees of the event. The README email is complete with the who, what, where, and when details. Also attached are two very important documents: the bios for every attendee and the spreadsheet that contains all the matches. This way, attendees can do their homework on everyone who's attending and make the most out of the event. To send and manage her emails, she's used Splash and MailChimp in the past, but ultimately prefers just sending through Gmail.
Yeah, I'm like, it's just an email. I know people have been like, you need to make it prettier. I'm like, you need to shut your mouth. So one day,
Yeah,
when I have my
exactly.
README email person.
So can you walk us through the steps, or at a high level, I guess, of the promotion and coordinating of any given event? So it starts with you're finding sponsors, or does it start with the idea? I mean, it's different each time.
It's different each time. It starts with the idea generally. So we'll find the idea. So like what I told you earlier, the event request, if you reach out to me for, hey, I have an idea, I'd love to present, my next process or step in the process would be to give you this form. You fill out the form with all the pertinent information, and then I circle back with you with dates that are available. We'd lock down the dates. Fast forward 6 months, the event's coming up. I shop it around to different stores or different places or venues and say, hey, we haven't done something with you in a while. We have these 3 great events coming up. We'd love to host one here, your choice. Always free event tickets to your members. And then they're like, cool, we want to host this one. I'm like, sweet, let me update, let me add, start building the page. So then I'll build the event page, and the event page sometimes has the info on it. Sometimes it's a secret location until I figure out where it's going to be hosted. And somehow I always figure that out. I don't know how. I think it's because I don't get stressed, and I'm like, whatever, there's always a plan B or C or D or E. But I always try to introduce really cool places to our members and to our users. I don't want it to just be like a random blank space.
Yeah,
it's usually
for
like
sure.
a space that's really beautiful or Instagrammable or you've never heard of before.
Yeah, exactly.
And then newsletter. The newsletter, Instagram stories, Facebook groups. And what's crazy for New York, knock on wood, I've stopped promoting New York events, and I've just let it build word of mouth. And other markets I promote. I mean,
That's cool, though. Yeah.
And our newsletter is pretty big. We're at about 21K.
Wow.
Great.
Yeah.
Nice.
So sending it out has been really fun. When people are like, "Oh, I didn't know you had an event," and I was like, "Well, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
I literally put it
everywhere.
It's on my website. It's on Facebook. It's on Instagram. It's on my newsletter. Like, I could text you, but I really just don't think you're worth it anymore." Like,
For the Luna Bar event specifically, she worked with a 6 Degree Society Chicago chapter member and friend of hers who works at Luna. She acted as the liaison between Luna's corporate communications team and Emily. This process was very collaborative, and Luna had to approve everything from the panelists to the name of the event. So FYI, there's a lot of back and forth when working with a big brand like that on a sponsored event. She started pitching last October and didn't get the green light until this summer for the event to be held this October.
The event was called Your Worth is Worth Negotiating. How did that connect to Luna? Did they have a say in what the whole
Yes, they
was?
did. Yes, they had a lot of says, which is good. Their initiative is to lower the gender inequality gap. So yes, I had pitched a bunch of names, but they ended up finalizing Your Worth is Worth Negotiating. It was much better than I'm pretty clever, but they got this
There
one.
you go. It's 1:45 and she gets a text from her 6 Degree Society ambassador / go-to caterer that she'll be on time for the event. Julia made this ridiculously yummy and gorgeous charcuterie plate for this event. And when it comes to preparing food and drinks for events, Emily learned a lesson or two that'll be useful to know to save some money.
So for this particular one, we had a bigger budget to play with. My rule of thumb for cheese, I used to freak out and need to get so much money worth of cheese and food and whatnot. And the rule of thumb is 3 cheeses is enough for an event because I usually end up walking home with half of it. And so people aren't there for the cheese or the alcohol, like they're there for the experience, but those are extra perks to have. And then for the alcohol partners, I always love doing something that you're like, oh, I've never worked with them before. I've never heard of them before. Like the social sparkling,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've tried yet. It's like a sake wine. And a lot of them come to me and will be like, oh, you have an audience. So it's a win-win
Gotcha.
type of
Right.
thing.
Cool.
There's not always a monetary relationship. Ideally, there is. But sometimes it's just like, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
From 2 to 3:30, Emily dives into emails. This goes back to what she said about batching tasks. If you carve out time to dedicate specifically to emails or studying or applying to internships or really anything, the less likely you'll get distracted and more likely you'll be productive. Fast forward to 4 p.m. and Emily is heading over to Town Stages, which is where the event is being held.
Can you kind of set the scene on when you first arrive? Like, what are you physically doing to get ready for this?
Yeah, so it's the first time I've been in the space. So I'm not quite sure what the space even looks like.
Oh,
So-
Gorgeous.
which is gorgeous, but I had no idea how setup was going to work. So I was like, can you give me a lay of the land? There was like a theater practice happening where our event's going to be. So like, walk me through. You have the chairs, right? Like, yeah, we talked about the chair. You have the chairs, few. Okay. And then like, I realized the name on the graphic that was behind us was spelled incorrectly, so I had to fix the graphic and re-email it, and a few last minute things. And the Luna Bar team was there as well, so they were setting up their stuff.
I wanted to know when the Luna entourage showed up. Like,
They
how many people
so
are
fantastic.
there? Yeah.
They were 3 people, and they set up a photo booth. They set up like a negotiation quiz style station, so you could see what your negotiation style was. And then what did they have? They had like all the Luna bars set up in adorable ways throughout the venue.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
I still am like munching on those. And then Julia's making Town Stages is an exception where they have a prep kitchen. And so I was like, bye, Julia. See you in the kitchen. You have to go make your food properly. And and then we started setting up and writing out the name tags, the like 70 name tags, because that took a time.
Now it's 6:30 and the panelists arrive and get the rundown for the night. The panelists are badass females who have experiences, pieces of advice, and stories to share about negotiating. We had Alexandra of SoFi, Jody of Shoes of Prey, Beatrice of the Honey Pot Company, and Robin of Town Stages.
I gave them the lay of the land, but pre-event, I sent them a run of show of the questions of rules of moderating too, of like how to be a good panelist, to be mindful of how much you talk, you're sharing the stage, don't cut people off. If you don't agree, say, I have a different perspective. certain etiquette just to have.
Definitely.
I was actually going to ask that later on, but I'll go into it now. How did you learn? You're moderating this panel, right? Was that something you learned over time, or were you just naturally good at it?
Oh, gosh. I think I just love asking questions. And so then someone gave me a mic at one point and I started asking questions. So I never thought of it. I never thought anything of it until one day in 2016, a girlfriend of mine who was like not even a really good friend at that point saw on Facebook that I had moderated panels and fireside chats and whatnot. And she reached out and she's like, would you have any interest in moderating an event for Ann Taylor? And I was like, what? Yeah. And so she's like, let me have you come in and I'll tell you a little bit about it. And she's like, have you ever heard of this play called Waitress? And I was like, shut up. Yes. Why? And, that's my favorite play, my movie. Carrie Russell, saw the play on my birthday. She goes, well, do you know who Jessie Mueller is? She's the lead. Yes, I know who Jessie is. Like, go on. And she's like, okay, cool. So we're going to host this panel and we want you to moderate a panel. I'm still like, can't believe I did this. And I'm still here to tell the story, to faint with excitement.
Here to tell the tale.
And, it was Jessie Mueller and Diana Poller who had created Waitress and like created the experience. And so I had to moderate and I had to write all the questions and they had to get it approved by all of their teams. And then they dressed me and they did my hair and makeup. And then it was in front of 150 people in the Ann Taylor store. And I got my payment for that one was like 9 or 10 outfits from Ann Taylor. They're like, is it okay if we pay you in clothes? I was like, yes. I'm so poor. Like, I can't buy clothes. So,
that is great.
Anyways, you have fake until you make it.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So 7 p.m. the guests start arriving. You hug each and every one of them and try your best to remember people's names. What are some tricks that you can share to help you to remember?
For me, it's very much context clues. Like if I see you outside of an event, I'm like, and you're like, Emily, it's good to see you. And I have no idea who you are. I always say like, remind me the last time I saw you. And you're like, I saw you at the Luna event. I'm like, oh, Krista, how's it going? It just helps me build that context. So for remembering people that I don't know, I make bios of each person. So I'm seeing their faces and essentially learning something. And I try to remember like one funny little tidbit from their bio. So if you read the bio, I think that's important if you come to an event.
That's a tip I've never heard before.
Like, the context clue?
Yeah. Tell me when the last time I saw you.
Or remind me the last time I saw you. It's been a while. And then I've literally had conversations with people where I'm like, I don't know who this is. And then they'll say it and it's someone else than I even thought it was.
Gotcha.
So
that's like the less rude way of saying, I'm so sorry, I don't remember you at all.
I feel like that would really help me and I'm going to start doing it.
Yeah, give it a go. Or like you hope that your friend can be your buffer and be like, have you all met yet? And then you're hoping Krista's like, what's your name? And and then it works out that way. And you're like, oh, Sarah, that's it.
After a half hour of mingling and networking, it's time for the attendees to find their 15-minute match, including Emily. She would have too much FOMO if she didn't give herself a match. This event only had one match per person, but depending on the programming for the night, a 6 Degree Society event could have anywhere between 1 to 3 matches per event per person.
Now it's 8 p.m. and the panel discussion begins. Just letting you guys know, I attended this event and I'm so glad I did. It was really just like a reflective moment and learning experience for me specifically and a lot of other people. It changed my view on what networking meant and why it's so important to do it. I could go on and on about how amazing it was, but for the sake of time, head over to the show notes page for this series. There you'll find the full play-by-play recap post and tips on how to negotiate for yourself. But long story short, the conversation was centered around the idea that
essentially that we as women in particular, just knowing our worth and feeling really confident with having these conversations with our peers about our worth, with other people, professionals in the industry, and doing our research beforehand and not just settling for the status quo, but learning to ask for a little bit more and training ourselves day by day. And if that's, negotiating every little day with, I'm trying to think of like your donut man on the donut cart guy. Like you can practice negotiating every single day to make you feel more confident and stronger. So by the time a raise comes up or a promotion opportunity or you're interviewing for a new job, you should feel that confidence to put it into play.
I just want to talk about one specific moment that I kind of wanted your thoughts on. When the question opened up to the floor, a member got really, really emotional and was really thankful that this discussion was happening and how candid everybody was. How was that moment for you as a person who was very obviously involved with putting on this event?
I just wanted to cry myself. I was like, oh my God, this is resonating. You're hoping that people are taking nuggets of advice away, or it's resonating. So when it's like actually resonating publicly with a member, and that the crowd was so supportive, it wasn't like they turned to her and they're like, "You weirdo, why are you crying?"
Yeah,
they were
so awesome.
Yeah, they were really like, I've been there too, and I totally feel it as well. And people felt safe. It validated that people could feel safe to be vulnerable.
The event went so well that people stuck around for an hour and a half after it ended, which brings us to 10:30 at night. Emily is back at her mother's apartment by 11 and crashes a half hour later.
Normally, do you have, because I know after when I work a live event or live news afterwards, it's kind of hard for me to, because it's so
adrenaline,
exciting. Yeah, the
100%,
adrenaline, is it
yeah.
hard for you to calm down?
And then I'm like, I should be working. I should be doing something. And
I'm so inspired, yeah.
And I'm like tracking Instagram. I'm like, how many people are using the hashtags? Like, how many people posted? How many stories? Save.
So you just experienced a day in the life of a networking founder and entrepreneur, but how does one actually start and scale a networking events business from scratch? In part 2 of the Nurture Your Network series, join us as we go through Emily's career journey and experiences leading up to where she is today. Emily was obsessed with creating her own network post-graduation, so she moved to Argentina and eventually landed jobs at Ralph Lauren, Club Monaco, and Tory Burch in marketing, HR, and events. As Emily put it, let's join her on her career caravan. Stay tuned. You can get to know us and our guests more by keeping up with us on social. Join our community on Instagram and LinkedIn at ExperienceADITL. That's Experience ADITL. Thanks for listening. To find the show notes with all relevant links and photos for this series, head over to ExperienceADITL.com. That's ExperienceADITL.com.
If you learned something in this episode, please take some time to help our mission by leaving a positive rating and review of the show. Each week, we bring you a new interview series with guests from different jobs and industries. So, don't forget to subscribe.